Talk about bad timing yesterday. President Biden threw a party, to celebrate the passage of his so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which doesn't reduce inflation. And while he and other top Democrats were reveling, the Dow plunged nearly 1,300 points. You could even see it in the right-hand corner as he celebrated. Quite a contrast. It was its steepest slide in more than 2 years, following Tuesday's scathing inflation report. The Labor Department revealing its consumer price index rose 8.3% in August from the same month a year ago. But Americans didn't need those numbers to know just how bad things really are. Food prices have seen their highest increase in more than 40 years. Look at that. Cost of eggs, milk, and other basic staples are all going through the roof. But it appears Democrats are out of touch with Americans. Here's Nancy Pelosi yesterday asking for a round of applause.
Mr. President, thank you for unifying and inspiring a vision of a stronger, fairer, safer future for all, for our children. Your extraordinary leadership has made this glorious day possible. That's an applause line.
Yeah. Was cringe. I'm not sure who throws a party as the Titanic's sinking, but there appears to be a Debbie Downer that attended the party, or at least was a bystander. Harris, take a look at the media and their reaction.
You're listening there to President Biden at the White House. He's celebrating the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. He says that he's been fighting Big Pharma for decades. But there is this unfortunate split screen right now with the Dow taking a total beating, down more than 1,200 points. And so it feels like it's hard to be celebratory for some people in the crowd.
New inflation data today showing that consumer prices remain painfully high for Americans, which led to a really rough day for the stock market.
A tough day to have the big Inflation Reduction Act event, as they did at the White House, with this number that came out yesterday.
Inflation, and it's really impacting Americans' lives. The costs just keep skyrocketing.
They act like this is new. I guess for them, maybe it is breaking news. I thought the term unfortunate flip screen. How about the facts that don't roll with the president partying like it's 1999? Like, why don't we just call stuff what it is? Why do we have to be so delicate? I'm not saying cuss on film, on tape. I'm saying just be real and be honest. We're in trouble economically. And the president doesn't see it, doesn't hear it. I mean, the New York Post calling him tone deaf Joe. Tone deaf, yes. Blind, yes. All of it. But now are we looking at the world's only living heart donor? Because when you look at the price of food right now, it is hard to say that your policies are working. Right. We need a fireside chat with a little of I feel your pain. And remember, that worked mightily for Bill Clinton. And who cares about all that, though, in the politics? What will work mightily for the American people? Is he trying to figure that out? Did he read the CBO score on the Inflation Reduction Act? Did he read the Penn-Wharton model? Does he know that it doesn't even approach touching inflation till beyond 2031? Because the deficit, doesn't work on inflation the way that he thinks it does.
No, you're right. I'll never forget when you brought up those numbers to Senator Manchin. They're real numbers, and
he called me a liar to my face. What am I now? Yeah. I was telling the truth.
You were telling the truth. The numbers don't lie. You presented them with your footnotes and data points and everything. Steve, but the press secretary should have taken a note on that end and brought her facts and data points, because here was her answer when asked about inflation.
When you look at the data, the inflation data, we're seeing more progress bringing global inflation down in the U.S. economy. Overall, prices have been essentially flat in our country these last 2 months. That is welcome news for American families. Every day this summer, gas prices have come down. We are at about $1, have come down on average $1.30 a gallon. That is because of the work that this administration did with the leadership of this president. This month, we saw some welcome moderation in the price increases for food at the grocery store. It's moderating, which is important, and real wages are going up again for the second month in a row.
going to pop this up really quick just because she said that prices are essentially flat. Right. So we have a chart. It shows that they've gone up to 8.3%. This is like saying your child has gotten a 1.0 GPA for 2 years and it's essentially flat. That is technically true, but it's flat at 1.0.
Yeah, but Katie, look, they're going with that graph right there. You're going up the mountain. Right now we're at the top of the mountain and the mountain is flat. So technically she's right, but the number is really high. The price of eggs has gone up something like 40% in the last year, which is unbelievable. And you know, as bad as, you know, electricity and everything else, the number that is jaw-dropping, since it's, you know, fall is around the corner here, is the cost of fuel oil.
Yeah.
For a lot of people here in the Northeast and the North, they rely on fuel oil. It's up 70%. Now think about that. I'm old enough to remember when Jimmy Carter was president of the United States.
You're just a baby.
And prices were through the roof, I'm telling you. And you know what he said when everything was very expensive, particularly oil? He said, you know what you need to do, America? You need to whip inflation now. They had these win buttons. And so he said, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to turn down your thermostat. And you know what you do when it's cold? Put on a sweater. So apparently that's going to be Joe Biden's advice. You know what, folks? Things are expensive. Get a sweater. Macy's is having a sale.
Yeah, that won't work in California, though.
No.
It was 114 degrees, and their grid was shut down, and people couldn't charge anything, including those electric cars everybody's supposed to buy.
No kidding.
Get a sweater, Laura, or listen to a song that the New York Post describes as reportedly about suicide and heroin addiction, as they did yesterday when James Taylor played this for us.
My body's aching, and my time is at hand, and I won't make it any other way. I have seen fire and I've seen rain.
And how about James Taylor, a voice that heals our soul and unites the nation?
Wow. This is probably the most appropriate part of yesterday altogether, was the choice of this song, because apparently this song was, Kaylee, to your point, written about suicide, and they decided to play this song at their big celebratory event at the White House for the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, all of it is so infuriating. What you were just talking about, Steve, with the press secretary, the fact that we have a press secretary, a White House, a government, who they feel it's totally acceptable just to lie to the American people and gaslight us and constantly just tell us whatever it is they think they can do to cover up the problem of the day. That is infuriating to the American people because there are no solutions on the horizon. We have seen with the numbers that came out yesterday with the drop in the Dow, we have seen that obviously the Fed raising rates doesn't fix inflation, that dumping $1.9 trillion into an economy does not fix inflation. You have to change policy, and they are not willing to do that. And so I think all of this yesterday was so insulting.
Mm-hmm. Emily, James Taylor, not the only pop culture celeb weighing into inflation.
That's right. Your girl Cardi B weighed in too. And here's the thing. This is what I love about her, is that she's unabashedly herself, obviously, right? Unapologetically so. And she represents a human, an American citizen. So she went on IG Live and she was talking about her family and the issues that they were facing. She was saying there's surging mortgage costs. There's a lack of inventory. No one is selling their home. And she said, I was looking at some areas, the way that the prices soar up. How are people surviving? She said, I want to know. My family and my friends, they're so grateful to have me.
We have that soundbite. So
great.
Can you just play it?
Yes, perfect.
How are people surviving? I want to know. Like my family and my friends, they're so grateful to have me. But it's just like, yo, what happened to people that don't have a me? What's going on with the people that don't have a me? Not just rest. They're like, Britain and LA, they're going to start having more blackouts because Britain got to pay double the price when it comes to electricity. And LA is I knew that this was going to happen. I knew we was going to have a financial crisis.
She's absolutely right, Kaylee. She says, what do people do who don't have a me? And she hit the nail on the head, too, when she said all these promises are being made, but living is unbearable. Here's what's interesting to note as well, you guys. So on her Instagram that she put that on, she has 139 million followers.
Wow.
The president just has 18.9. On Twitter, which she also posted this to, 28 million. The president just has 25. Whose voice is louder? And I point this out as well. When you mentioned the gaslighting, we talk about all the time the talking points and the narrative being pushed by this administration. Americans feel a certain way, regardless of how the White House tries to make us feel. And she's a perfect example of someone with a family who's experiencing that hardship, and that's how they'll vote in November.
139 million people heard her loud and clear. Wow.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.